Today we're going to be focusing on the Chronomancer, who I think might just be one of the best HQ choices in the entire codex. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics for another Necrons related strategy video, where today we're focusing on the Crypteks who have the power to mess with time itself. I really do quite like the new Cryptek models, the Psychomancer and Chronomancer. I'm sure there's a lot of Necron players who are looking forward to Games Workshop actually getting round to releasing them. In this video we'll be taking a look over his rules, any obvious buffs and synergies for him on the table, and good units that he might be able to run alongside. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So the Chronomancer is a Necron HQ choice for 80 points or 4 power level, and as a support character he's got a fairly unassuming stat line. Movement 8, weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+, strength and toughness 4, 4 wounds, only 1 attack, leadership 10 and a 4+ save that's backed up by a 4+ invul. Despite the invul, he really isn't all that tough, it won't take all that much small arms fire to make him go away, so he really does need to be screened from the enemy, and he's not going to be doing much in close combat either with just 1 attack. Keywords wise, he is infantry, he can fly, he's a Cryptek, and he has the dynasty keyword, and the boosted movement and flying ability really does mean that he can get his buffs where he needs to go. Wargear wise, he's armed with Chronotendrils, presumably his little trailing tentacle things, and they allow him to make 3 additional attacks at strength 4, AP 0 and damage 1. Not bad to have, but they still don't tip him into being any good in combat. Other than that, he has the option to take an Aeon Stave or an Entropic Lance, and both of those staffs can be used at shooting or melee. The Aeon Stave shooting is 18 inches, assault D3, strength 5, AP -2 and damage 1, it has the blast special rule and also ignores invul saves. In melee it's strength user, so strength 4, AP -2 and again it ignores invul saves. I guess it could situationally be quite good if you're matched up against demons or something that's actually reliant on its invul save for its durability. But a lot of the time even things that do have invul saves aren't going to care at all. For example, a Space Marine Blade Guard veteran with a Storm Shield, it doesn't care that you ignore its invul save because it'll still be saving on a 4+ with its armor save anyway. AP -2 just isn't all that much. Out of the two, I prefer the Entropic Lance. You only get 1 shot at 18 inches, but it's strength 8, AP -3, and it's got a whopping damage of D3+3. Sure, it's very much a one-hit wonder, but it's got good strength and AP, and if you do manage to sneak a wound through, then it could actually do something really significant. An average of 5 damage could allow you to one-shot a character, or take half the health of a tank. I'd take that one just for the chance to do something a bit more meaningful. In melee, it's still not very good, it's strength 4, AP -3 and damage 3. But again, this guy just isn't going to be good in melee whatever happens, so it's not exactly the biggest deal. You don't really take a Chronomancer for his shooting or melee though, he's really there to be a buff character, and he can provide command protocols much like any other character, and more importantly affect 1 unit per turn with his Chronometron. In your command phase you can select 1 friendly dynasty unit within 9 inches of the model, and until the start of your next command phase you can reroll charge rolls made for that unit, and the unit gains a 5+ invul save. Now compared with plenty of other Necron options, this is really quite de-restricted as to what you can put it on. It only has to be a dynasty unit, it doesn't have to be core, it doesn't have to be infantry, and at least one of the 2 buffs is likely to be quite relevant no matter what you're putting it on. So let's talk about a few potential targets for it. Honestly, Chronomancers are kind of spoiled for choice, and it's certainly something that you can build around. Generally, at least for the durability point of view, you want to be loading it onto something that your opponent is going to be targeting next turn. You're not getting anything out of a durability buff if you put it on a unit, and then your opponent decides he'd rather shoot something else. Ideally, you also want it to be a large unit if possible. With any 1 unit buff, you're going to get more out of it if you just put it on a really big unit compared with a really small one next door. It really incentivizes you to take something big like a 20 strong warrior blob. I'd say that warriors are one of the better shouts for a Chronomancer buff. You can get really big units of them, they only have a 4+ save normally, and that means that a lot of things are going to cut straight through that, so your 5+ invul will be relevant against anything with AP -2 or better. Even small increases in durability on a warrior squad can be really meaningful when you take into account reanimation protocols. If your opponent really needs to kill this squad that turn because it's on a key objective, or it's just at the front and centre of your army, the 5+ invul will save a lot of Necron lives, and then hopefully quite a lot of them will get straight back up, and again still be able to benefit from that Chronometron save, and the ones that got back up will just be just as hard to kill again. Both Scorpek and Ophidian Destroyers are good targets as well. They'll get a fair bit out of the invul save, particularly the Ophidians who only have a 4+ save normally, but it will help blunt anti-tank weapons against the Scorpeks as well. Both of these guys really want to be getting in combat though, so getting a nice extra reroll charge rolls into the mix is no bad thing. Maybe it could save you a command point, or even get you a charge when you didn't have one otherwise. Kind of a mix between the two. You could take a big unit of flayed ones, like the warriors. They can also be 20 strong, and they also want to reroll charges. You could put it on Triarch Praetorians or Warside Lich Guard, working much in the same way. Tomb Blades could be a real pain to shift with the Invul. You could make Locust Destroyers just that little bit hardier. Or perhaps one of the most annoying uses of it for your opponent could be to load up 9 Auspex Scarab Swarms with a 5+ Invul and have them wander up the board onto the objectives, putting down a crazy amount of wounds to gum up the midfield, all of which are a nightmare to remove due to their 5+ Invul save. Sadly, despite the fact that you can put this on vehicles, I think the majority of the Necron vehicles aren't actually worth doing it on. The Quantum Shielding ones already have a 5+ Invul, the Monolith isn't going to care too much as it has a 2+ save anyway, so really if you were using it on vehicles it might be more for the charge rerolls, which is only relevant on a few niche cases. So let's talk about a few of the other options that Crypteks have then. First of all, there's a few bits of Cryptek Arcana that I think could be really useful. I think that the Count Emperor Nanomines are one of the better picks as they go. They're only usable by the Chronomancer, and you choose an enemy unit within 18 inches, and next time it makes advance and charge rolls, you have to half the results. In a lot of matchups it isn't going to be relevant, but if you have good positioning and do manage to get this on an enemy Death Star unit, then it could potentially cost them a very powerful close combat phase. Pricey at 30 points, not necessarily relevant in all matchups, but in the ones where they do pay off, it could be really punishing. Another one that I'm quite interested in is the Hypermaterial Ablator, which is 25 points, and it kind of doubles down on the Chronomancer's defensive abilities. You get to select a core or Cryptek unit within 9 inches, and it gives them the benefit of light cover. Something like Necron warriors in particular are going to be looking far harder to shift, if instead of a 4+ armor save, they have a 3+ save and a 5+ invul. He could split the buffs up as well, give one unit a 5+ invul, and one the light cover if he wanted to. I'd say that those were the two that I'd most consider, though you could think about buffing his defensive abilities if you really wanted to. The Photonic Transsubjector is 20 points, and it allows you to ignore the first failed save per turn, which isn't too bad when you have a 4+ invul save. If your opponent had only got a few high power shots to try and take him out, then it could genuinely be the difference between life and death. Personally though, I'd try and just keep him protected with other infantry units, and consider picking up the Nanomines, the Ablator, or just keeping him cheap. In terms of relics, there's only one that I think really stands out, and that one's the Veil of Darkness as normal. The Chronomancer has really good synergy with the Veil of Darkness, as it allows him to be on the board at the start of the turn, so he can deploy that 5+ invul and reroll charges on one unit, and then he can get that unit and him over to where they need to be. There's plenty of Necron units that work really well for this. A full squad of warriors with Gauss Reapers is interesting, a very scary amount of firepower to have coming out of reserve, and very hard to remove with the Cryptek. You could think about doing a Novok melee strategy as well. Have a unit with +1 to charge, put the invul save and the reroll charges on them, and then essentially you've got a very tough unit coming out of Deep Strike with a rerollable 8-inch charge. Still not guaranteed, but gives you around about a 2/3 chance to get into the enemy. Most of the other relics aren't really all that good for the Chronomancer. I think I'd either go the Veil of Darkness or nothing. Though you could consider the Gauntlet of the Conflagrator, which can give you some anti-horde mortal wounds, essentially just a little bit of extra free shooting output. Or if it's a Sotek Cryptek, you could think about the Vanquisher's Mask to make an enemy unit fight last, and that would make it very hard for enemies to want to charge a unit of Scorpec Destroyers or something if they know they're not going to be hitting until after they've struck. Typically you're going to want a Noble to have the Warlord trait, otherwise you're going to be sacrificing your command protocols, which probably isn't worth it. But if he does, then perhaps Implacable Conqueror could be an interesting one. That way not only one unit can reroll charges within 9 inches, but also any others within 6 inches can as well. Stratagem-wise, his lance could be a reasonable target for Techno-Oracular targeting, the one that auto-wounds if you want to guarantee at least one hit on the target and give you maximal chance of getting that scary 5 damage through. Though if you haven't used your shooting phase command reroll, it might just be better to use that instead. You still have a very good chance of making the wound roll successfully, and if you succeed then you don't have to pay the command point up front. If he dies, then Resurrection Protocols is likely to be a very good use of one command point, potentially getting back up with a few wounds remaining. In general, he's more of a support unit, so you're going to want to pick your dynasty for your actual combat units, but he is a bit better in some of the dynasties than others. In particular, Zarakan and Mefrit can both buff his shooting. The Zarakan wound reroll on their Entropic Lance again is quite high value as it's just so high damage. Other than that, having Obsec on a character is no bad thing, particularly if he's running after all those annoying Scarab Swarms. So overall, I think that this guy is one of the strongest HQs in the Necron Codex. In terms of amount of value out for the points that are put in, I don't think many other things are close. Maybe Technomancers and Catacomb Command Barges being some of the other better picks, with a cheap price tag, a powerful buffing ability, and having a bit of a fun sting in his tail with the shooting. I think that we'll see plenty of them played in competitive Necron lists. Let me know what you think of the Chronomancer down in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more Necron videos like this. And if you have been enjoying the channel's videos recently, I would just like to mention that I do have a Patreon page which you can find down in the video description. Making all these videos does take a fair amount of time, so if you are enjoying regularly then any support is massively appreciated, particularly if you are watching quite a bit. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, such as seeing certain new videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and the chance to win some really big prizes, with automatic entry to the prize giveaway that happens at the start of each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.